François Pascal Simon, Baron Gérard, was a French painter born in Rome, where his father occupied a post in the house of the French ambassador. His mother was Italian. As a Baron of the Empire, he is sometimes referred to as Baron Gérard. Life. François Gérard was born in Rome, on 4 May 1770, to J.S. Gérard and Clara Maté. At the age of 12, Gérard obtained admission into the Pension du Roi in Paris. From the pension he passed to the studio of the sculptor Augustin Pajou, which he left at the end of 2 years for that of the history painter, Nicolas Guy Brenet, whom he quit almost immediately to place himself under Jacques-Louis David. In 1789 he competed for the Prix de Rome, which was carried off by his comrade Giraudit. In the following year he again presented himself, but the death of his father prevented the completion of his work, and obliged him to accompany his mother to Rome. In 1791 he returned to Paris, but his poverty was so great that he was forced to forego his studies in favor of employment which should bring in immediate profit. David at once availed himself of his help, and one of that master's most celebrated portraits, of Louis Michel Le Pelletier de Saint-Fargeau, owe much to the hand of Gérard. This painting was executed early in 1793, the year in which Gérard, at the request of David, was named a member of the Revolutionary Tribunal, from the fatal decisions of which he, however, invariably absented himself. In 1794 he obtained the first prize in a competition, the subject of which was the 10th of August, that is, the storming of the Tuileries Palace. Further stimulated by the successes of his rival and friend Giraudit in the salons of 1793 and 1794, Gérard obtained undisputed success, and the money received from ISNI for these two works enabled Gérard to execute in 1797 his Psyche et l'amour. At last, in 1799, his portrait of Madame Mère established his position as one of the first portrait painters of the day. In 1808 as many as 8, and in 1810 no less than 14, portraits by him were exhibited at the Salon, and these figures afford only an indication of the enormous numbers which he executed yearly. All the leading figures of the Empire and of the Bourbon Restoration, all the most celebrated men and women of Europe, sat to Gérard. This extraordinary vogue was due partly to the charm of his manner and conversation, for his salon was as much frequented as his studio. Madame de Staël, George Canning, Talleyrand, the Duke of Wellington, have all borne witness to the attraction of his society. Rich and famous, Gérard was stung by remorse for earlier ambitions abandoned. At intervals he had indeed striven with Giraudit and other rivals to prove his strength at history painting, still a more prestigious genre than portraiture. His Bataille d'Austerlitz showed a breadth of invention and style which are even more conspicuous in L'Entrée d'Henri IV at Paris, the work with which in 1817 he did homage to the returned Louis XVIII. After this date, Gérard declined, watching with impotent grief the progress of the Romantic school. Loaded with honours, Baron of the Empire in 1809, member of the Institute on 7 March 1812, officer of the Légion d'honneur, first painter to the king, he worked on, sad and discouraged, the Revolution of 1830, aided to his disquiet, and on the 11th of January 1837, after 3 days of fever, he died. Gérard is best remembered for his portraits. The colour of his paintings has suffered, but his drawings show in uninjured delicacy the purity of his line, and those of women especially remarkable for a virginal simplicity and frankness of expression. His students included Heinrich Christoph Kolb. Selected works: Napoleon Bonaparte as First Consul, February 1803. Portrait of Emperor Napoleon I. Madame Récamier. Portrait of the Empress Joséphine. Portrait of Désirée Clary. Portrait of Catherine Grand, Catherine Noël Grand de Talleyrand Périgord, Princesse de Benevent. Hortense de Beauharnais. Hortense de Beauharnais. Cupid and Psyche. Napoleon at the Battle of Austerlitz. Teresa of Avila. Daphnis and Chloe, circa 1824, Oil on Canvas, the Detroit Institute of Arts.